Okay, welcome back to the main section of today's podcast. This is one of those episodes that I don't do so often, but I always really enjoy because it's a discussion episode. And as those of you will already know who's listened to the intro, but for the visual aspects on YouTube, you won't have heard this. I'm really looking forward to this episode. So I'd like to welcome Tony to the podcast. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me back.
No, not a problem at all. It's always nice to have a returning guest, and so thankful for your time and everything. And your time is also helping me indulge in something that I've always wanted to do on the podcast, which is effectively a Bruce Springsteen special, which is what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be talking about the Tracks 2 box set, which was released on the 27th of June in 2025 this year. Now, forgive me, those watching the video, I will be referring to my phone for notes and track listings, etc. So you might see me on there quite a bit. But I think first thing we should, because I have stupidly, because it's really heavy, got the box here for those who can see it on a visual level. This is the vinyl box set. It is massive. There is a CD version as well, and there's a shortened version of this box set as well. It comes with a book and all the discs are either vinyl or CD, whatever. It's got everything on there. So just so you're aware, I've got a copy of that. I think Tony, you've got the shorthand version, haven't you?
Sure. Yes,
That's
two-disc version. Yes, I'm not quite comfortable spending a mortgage payment on vinyl yet.
Yeah, it was lucky it came out right after my birthday because I was able to spend the money I got given for that, because otherwise I would not have bought it either. So yeah, it's between us, we're covered on both sides. So Tony, do you want to let people know what Tracks 2 is? Because I haven't actually said what it is. I've just sort of shown it and said it's a box set of some sort.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think, in short, it's an embarrassment of riches. So what we're talking about here is 7 previously what you call lost, although he knew exactly where they were, but albums. Some of them were complete album projects, and some are one of those elements where later he went back and added tracks, adjusted it, and made an album out of it. But we're talking about 7 complete albums across 9 discs of wax in your case, and it's just a real range of material from Bruce that was previously either completely unknown, hinted at in some instances, and a complete surprise in others. If you ask me, it's a real example of how his working book or his workbook of songs progresses to the point at which he's happy with the finished albums, which we hear, and these are almost exercises to get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'll say before we go forward actually is that obviously I've read the book in my research that comes with the box set.
Okay.
So I've done that. I actually did it quite recently in the last few days. I've been doing it, so just to make sure it's fresh. And obviously rest of it's going to be from internet research, I think, from both of us, and then our own personal knowledge. Quick apologies if any of it is wrong from either of us. We're not going to be perfect, I'm sure. So if there is any inaccuracy, then that is the case. Yes, yeah. Well, or just research everything we say and just take the research as gospel, not what we say. Yeah, so effectively this box set runs from 1983 up till 2018. I've got a theory as to why it runs up to 2018. I don't think there's many tracks from 2018 exactly, but it does run that time period. It does fit in a lot of gaps in his discography, doesn't it?
I think so. I think you and I have had conversations about this before, where I've always thought that the 90s was his most creative period, because he was really sort of stepping outside of, he'd started it with Tunnel of Love, but he was stepping outside of what was considered his working process until that point, with E Street Band. But I feel like he got gun shy with the reaction to Lucky Town and Human Touch. And what was so bizarrely referred to as the hip hop album, or the hip hop beats album, or the loops album, that was known to exist. But things like Somewhere North of Nashville, Inyo, as well, all this shows that really was just such a fertile period for him. But at the same time, none of these albums. The thing that I've heard a lot in the talk around the album by him and in the press is that these albums represent areas in which people wouldn't expect him to work.
Mm.
And on face value, possibly the only one I think is completely left field is the Philadelphia sessions, because all the rest, if you look at them as a piece of the wider puzzle, they fit gaps.
Yeah.
So the 83 garage sessions, it feels like, okay, so the reaction to Nebraska, the positive critical reaction, caught him off guard. Perhaps gun shy of Born in the USA, he then went back to create more in that ilk. But you can hear the songwriting, and I think what's interesting is you hear the physicality of his voice, his timbre change too. If you listen to the way in which some of those songs are sung, the voice that he sings is with the Born in the USA singing voice versus the River. There is a difference in his singing voice, and at that, I think you can hear that step greater on 83 than in Nebraska songs, and that's an important part of it. You know, the least favorite of mine, and I know it's probably not everyone's, but you know, Twilight Hours.
Yeah,
you can hear him. So that one, I'd say I think there might be some that's 2018 on it, but I think the rest of it predates even Wrecking Ball, because he was working on that project for so long. But you can hear he's finding a voice, and so a lot of them fit those in between pieces. Had Inyo been released, it would have been a logical step after Ghost of Tom Joad, but it does fill a gap.
Yeah, no, it's there's, as you say, there's seven. Well, you've mentioned some of the albums there. There are 7 albums, as we said, and there are, you know, the 90s is a very gappy period in his discography. If we look, to be honest, if we look, the 90s and the 2010s are predominantly where we're looking at here. There's a few 2000s bits, but the projects in the 2000s from this, that they seem to be tied to other reasons as to why they exist, rather than just be studio output from Bruce. Yeah, the 90s and the 2010s, there are gaps in the discography, often considered to be weaker periods in terms of recorded music by fans as well. So this does fill the gaps there. We've got 7 albums. I think the best way to tell this story, as well as to discuss them, is chronologically. So the albums we've got the 83 Garage Sessions. That's number 1. We've got the Philadelphia Sessions, number 2. We've also got Faithless, I think is the 3rd disc, if I'm not missing something out there. I think the next, or no, it might be Somewhere North of Nashville, might be the next disc.
Yeah, so you've got Somewhere North of Nashville is next.
Yeah. And then it's Faithless, or Inyo, then Faithless.
Then Faithless, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then there's Twilight Hours as well, and then Perfect World, which is kind of a compilation album that he's put together retrospectively of all these tracks he had for either other projects or just had lying around that he thought suited. So we'll start the LA Garage Sessions, I think, and well, we should do, because it's chronological. I'm going to go as chronologically as I can. I think let's do it in terms of years. I think might be easiest to do it, instead of rather doing it in track in disc order. So the LA Garage Sessions, effectively the whole box set, from reading the book, and this is always my interpretations of what they've written, so again I might have something wrong, but it seems like the whole box set really begins with a new recording device with more tracks on that Bruce effectively managed to acquire into his collection of many musical trinkets. And that's where the idea was born for this 83 Sessions. As you say, it's Nebraska had released in 82, Born in the USA comes out in 84, and effectively Bruce doesn't really know what he wants to do. He knows the logical step for him career-wise is Born in the USA, and this is all kind of what's alluded to in the book. But he doesn't know if, because Nebraska did so well, are people now going to view him as an artist who, because at this point, from what Bruce knows, Nebraska is his best album according to critics. A lot of critics are saying this, so he's like, well, do I have to go down that route? And he doesn't really know what he wants, and he kind of records both the 83 Sessions and Born in the USA together, but separately, as in the song, he keeps the songs as separate as possible. And yeah, the 83 sessions basically are recorded mostly on this four. Wow, how many tracks is it? I don't even know if it's a 4-track. I can't remember. But this recorded with more tracks,
I think he'd
and most
upgraded
of it is,
since, yeah.
yeah. It might have got to 16 track. I know, because that would be a studio grade. So it might be an 8 or 10 track
Gone so
recorder that he
early.
managed to find. But most of it is him on his own. Still, there are other musicians on there, which is in the liner liner notes. I'm not sure if some of these beats are drum beats, as in loops. I'm not sure if some of them are like early versions of the drum loops that he's managed to do, because some of them are so steady and so basic that I don't know if they are that, and some of them are real drummers, which is something that will come back in the Streets of Philadelphia sessions. There's only 3 tracks on that with drum loops, and that's the album that's actually known for its drum loops. So yeah, your thoughts
Well, I
anyway
think the
on
other,
the 83 sessions?
I think just touching quickly on where those beats come from. I don't think that, we're talking 1983. What was for? I mean, if you listen to those even early hip hop albums from that time, a few years later, we aren't talking very complex drum loop
Yeah,
machinery or drum beats available, are we? I mean, I'm thinking of
yeah,
things like the early Run DMC records and stuff like that, which compared to today sounds like someone kicking a shoebox.
yeah.
So I think it's, I think it's very basic. I don't think it's another musician. I think
Mm,
it's him on everything. But I think
yeah,
so if we go back a little further, so the reason he had the 4-track or the 8-track in the first place was so that he could save time on studio bills, save
yeah.
time and money, because he was writing in the studio and demoing, and it was, if you look at how many songs were recorded for Darkness, how many were
Mm,
recorded for River, we know that at
yeah.
some point over the duration of, so start of 82, when he started writing and recording up until Born in USA was
Mm,
released, I think Max Weinberg said something like they recorded something like 80 songs during those
mm,
2 years, which is a huge amount for anyone.
yeah,
And he wanted to bring that down. So we got the songs that became Nebraska. We had songs that would then also work on Born in the USA. Somewhere he goes and does all of this. At various points over those years, he puts together like running orders of potential albums that
yeah,
include stuff that was never released on an album, like My Love Will Not Let You Down was on there.
yeah,
Things like
yeah.
Frankie was originally on the list for inclusion on this album before it became Born in the USA. We had albums. I think he was going to release it with an album called Murder Incorporated,
Mm,
which also included Johnny Bye Bye and This
yeah,
Hard Land, as well as My Love, and all of these things over the course of what's essentially 2 and a bit years. But I think in the same way that he bought that 4-track or 8-track, whatever it was, to save the studio time, in the oddest way, I think he unlocked something that gave him a future where he realized he could do all of this stuff himself. And I think that's what's
yeah,
interesting about the 83 sessions versus Nebraska, is
yeah.
that while after a while, like the Echoplex stuff starts to get a bit tiresome for all of those songs. I mean, how many songs are on that one? You've got
That
you've
we're
got the
looking at
list in front of you.
18.
There's 18 songs on
Yeah,
there, a double up on Fugitive's Dream.
yeah,
There's a couple of lyric swaps and borrows across the way. I think that I'm a Stranger Here and a Pilgrim or something comes in a couple of
yeah,
them, but that's 18 songs. And so it gets a bit tough. But what you're hearing is him finding confidence in doing more for him by himself
yeah,
in terms of whole songs. And that's why I think that's a fascinating album, because there is some fantastic songwriting in there.
yeah,
If we're talking Richfield Whistle, the song there, if we are talking
yeah,
Fugitive's Dream, Seven Tears is great. Don't Back Down, which I
yeah,
think is Don't Back Down on Our Love. Is that the full title?
yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, if that's not a hit waiting to happen for somebody
oh,
else that he just never gave to anyone, I mean,
but even that, even Unsatisfied Heart, that's a fantastic
yeah,
song. I'd heard a lot of it before because I think it was prior to Tunnel of Love. His vault was probably looser than a
yeah,
sieve, and
yeah.
so a lot of his stuff sneaked out in very rough
It's the most
versions.
bootlegged of all of
Yeah,
these records, yeah, by a
but
long way.
but some of these are complete surprises. Some of these
Yeah,
songs never heard, and it's so much nicer hearing them cleaned up without the fuzz of that's typical of a boot. And there is some of his. This is, if you think about his songwriting periods, everything, up until Tunnel of Love, it was almost unimpeachable. He was just churning out a real quality of song,
yeah.
and the quality on this is. I don't think the quality of songwriting dips below excellent on this album.
No, neither do I.
The,
It's
the recording
interesting.
process obviously gets a bit tiresome, but those
Yeah,
songs, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because obviously this and Born in the USA were recorded at the same time. Basically, what he's got is he's got two loads of songs that can be released, and he chooses Born in the USA probably at the request, or not request, but at the advice of E Street Band and record company. And also he's probably sitting there thinking, hang on a second, if I do this again,
Mm,
this could be derivative. If I do Nebraska again, so there is that element. But
yeah,
then he records Tunnel of Love with the exact same process, other
exactly
than
that. Yeah,
bringing in the E Street Band to do little bits on top.
yeah. I
So
think
he's
it's
learning how to
yeah,
record that album, and then his whole 90s output is what he's
yeah,
learned to do.
absolutely. It's just like, actually, I don't need to. I can do a lot of this myself. Maybe maybe he is like me and so many an introvert at heart and didn't like constantly going in the studio and
Yeah.
stuff like that to create something so personal, because a lot of his songwriting around that time became so much more personal.
Yeah. Yes.
But
And
I
that's
reckon it was more a case of, look, we've released Nebraska. We only released it because we knew what was coming. We're waiting
yeah,
for Born in the
yeah,
USA, pal. You can't do another.
yeah, exactly. But what you touched on something that's really nice there. This box set is this box set has converted me because I was always someone who struggled with the more outside of the classic period where you get songs like, because it kind of this thing kind of started with Drive All Night,
Mm,
Wreck on the Highway. These are the songs that kind of Independence Day maybe, but maybe mainly Drive All Night and Wreck on the Highway. Stolen Cars, another one. Those songs kicked off the sort of brooding period of Bruce Springsteen's career, where he is just very much put it this way, this is a somebody who's trying to put a man's perspective on love into his music, which you could argue has a toxic element, but we're talking about
mm,
the late 80s, early 90s here. That thought process didn't exist, but also it is his thought process, and it is him. That's who he is as a person. Like he's spoken like, he met Patty. He had to learn how to be a father. She taught him how to be a father. Like, he didn't have these skills, and it is him negotiating, learning these skills as to be a loving husband, a loving wife, a loving husband, a loving father. Sorry, it is these records are him negotiating that, and that is incorporated in the sound, and that runs the whole way through this box set,
mm.
mainly up till Inio, I think, and well, maybe up to Faithless is kind of where it's running, but that's more dealing with religious uh devotion and love. But it is kind of there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, really. I don't think I'd. You've summed something interesting up there. I think if you or I were to be thrust into, say, oh, here you go, here's a stadium waiting for you,
Mm,
and then there's another one in 2 days, and then there's another one in 2 days after that, and then you've got 5 nights in a row here, then you've got to
yeah,
deal with this. We'd probably just, what the,
yeah,
Whereas, on the other hand, obviously Springsteen worked his way up to that.
yeah,
We've read the books, we know his history up until that point.
yeah,
So let's take him up to when he did get to stadiums. He gets to Born in the USA stage. He knows that side of life. But in order to get to that, we know, the reason he was referred to as the boss was because of his drive. He was the
yeah,
one driving people in the Castiles. He went from, I think I read he was called the baby in the Castiles because
yeah,
for various reasons, he was scared of drink, because he thought one drink can all turn into his dad.
yeah,
Cut to, we've seen those pictures of what I call Rambo Bruce,
yeah, yeah,
where everything became Rambo sized, even your Heartland rockers,
yeah,
in the mid-80s. And then, okay, here's a wife. And we know
yeah,
how that marriage, but in the same way that you or I couldn't be thrust into his world, at that level, he was suddenly taken off of that and put into a real world situation where
Yeah.
he had no way to cope. How do I do this? How am I? And yeah, he's admitted he failed at both the first marriage and the way he handled the
Yeah.
divorce. But how do I cope with doing that? He had to take years off, if you think about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Exactly.
order to actually adjust to what you and I call everyday life. And it's interesting to hear him across those albums where he's dealing with that transition from that through Tunnel, through, in this instance, through Philadelphia sessions,
Yeah.
how that person actually takes on human life. And his songwriting really does change subject matter as a result, because it's the first time he's dealing with these as a person. He's
Yeah.
writing firsthand. You know, one of his most identifiable songs and hits is, if you look at The River, he's putting himself in, it was after his sister's life at that point,
Yeah.
and her young marriage was forced on him. And so he's now dealing with something very real, and his songwriting changes as a result.
Yeah, and I think that leads us on nicely to the next album in the chronology, which we're looking at is Streets of Philadelphia Sessions. Now, this is funny. In the book, they say there's only one fully complete work that is, that was an album, because the garage sessions never got to the point when this could be an album. It was kind of
It feels like a
about as
workout.
ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Whilst this was intended for release and was
Yeah.
ready to go, but then obviously the E Street Band got back together and did some songs of the greatest hits, and it just got left by the wayside. Life had moved on within the time space of Bruce recording this album. I think for him, his life had moved on.
It was only such a short space of time. If you
I
look at
know.
the chronology, I mean, this was 1994, and
Yeah.
then at the start of next year, it's actually let's reconvene.
Yeah, exactly. And effectively, so how this comes about, from again taking from the book, is that he decides that he just wants to experiment a bit with drum loops, with Streets of Philadelphia, the song. He does that, quite enjoys it. That gets put out and it does really well. I think the validation helps him see that this is something that could potentially have been viable. And he goes, actually, I really like that. So he asks a producer or somebody along the line who works in the industry to get him a CD worth of loops. So literally a CD worth of loops.
I'm just chuckling because I read somewhere that Ron Aniello wanted to go back and touch those loops up, because he referred to that CD as Fruity Loops or whatever it got. It was called, just because it's so yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
we're talking about archaic drum
that,
machines. This is an archaic loop machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the fact is as well, I don't think Bruce had any control over the loops. I think they were just given to him, and he selected them and did what he did. Only 3 of those loops I think are fully on the album, as in like that is the centerpiece. I don't know if it's only 3 in a whole. A drummer was brought in to drum on a lot of the tracks. So this whole idea of this being the hip hop album isn't necessarily 100%.
Just let's call it, because it's got a drum loop machine, we'll call it a hip hop album.
I know, it is utterly ridiculous in that. The sessions were put together effectively where in this studio they set up workstations for Bruce with 1 instrument in each station, so he could just walk around and layer effectively, and that's basically all he's doing. And there's photos in the book of this. There's just one bloke with him in the studio. He's literally sat behind a desk. I'm not even sure it's a mixing desk. I think it's just a desk. And he's just sat there sort of watching him do it from these photos. And yeah, effectively the reason we have this box set is because in recent times Bruce was spending some time with Brandon Flowers from the Killers, and he asked, can I hear the Loop album, can I hear it? Which meant that Bruce went back and listened to it with him and reappraised it on that day, and decided that he really liked it. And again, it might be that, hearing feedback from Brandon Flowers is getting that validation for something might cause him to feel like this is all okay in the end, because we know that sometimes he's a bit insecure in that way, according to
I think
what
that's
he
why
says.
he stopped it. I think that's why he didn't release it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read Steve Van Zandt's book, and you got to love little Steven, but his book, you'd think he was responsible for everything in everyone's career. He said that there was a line in there that he came back for a little bit of overdubs on the greatest hits
Yeah.
stuff. You can see it in the documentary, like he brings his mandolin in on this hard land. And stuff. He said
Mm.
that Bruce came out to him and said he'd got another album ready to go, but he couldn't find the hit single on it.
Yeah.
And Steven Van Zandt's answer was like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why do you think you need a hit? You're not in this game. Go
Yeah.
off and find your singer-songwriter guys again." And then he takes credit. This is what Ghost of Tom Joad led to.
Yeah.
Springsteen, I think in the book, or it might be in the book, it says that members of the band during that time, like Roy Bittan, suggested that the public might not like 4 albums of the same subject matter.
Mm.
I think it's also because the reaction to Tunnel and to Human Touch and Lucky Town wasn't as strong as he'd hoped.
Yeah.
But yeah, it got hidden, and I read that he toyed with releasing it during the Broadway era, perhaps because when he's telling his story in that, he's getting to this blank spot in the 90s and thinking, people think I was sitting on my backside during this time, so let's show them otherwise. But I'm very glad it's out there in the world, because I think it's easily his finest work of that decade, and it contains some of his finest songs, full stop. The production touches on that are so subtle and so appropriate that it doesn't overshadow any of the songs like it did on the Human Touch, Lucky Town albums. And perhaps because he's when were they were 92, weren't they? So perhaps because it's another 2 years down the line, it's what's that? So that's Tunnel of Love was 87, so that's 7 years down the line from that. So he's also got a different singing voice. Again, his voice changes across each decade, as anyone's does. And the songs from there benefit from that extra lived-in experience. And the only thing I could possibly say isn't 5 stars on those tracks is the Little Things.
Yeah.
But everything else on that, I mean, that of all of these is the one I've listened to the most. And if I could buy that one separately, I would. Because that's worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah, I mean this is my favorite record on it as well. I think his writing's so personal. I think it's so bleak. It's dark. I mean, one of the reasons he didn't release it in the book, it says, is that it was so dark, and he wasn't sure that the public could deal with Springsteen being that dark. I think it's dark more because it's electronically driven as well. I think that's part of it. The brightness of an analog instrument just isn't there in the same way, and I don't think it's I think tonally, I don't think tonally it's actually dark lyrically so much. At times it can be, at times it's not. But
One Beautiful Morning or Between Heaven and Earth, this stuff is. There are moments in there when you think, if this had been released, this would have been heralded as one of his finest works and one of the most important works of decades. And I still stand by that. I mean, when was this released? This was released in June.
June, so we're 31 years on.
So nearly 2 months of listening to this album that's been hidden for 30 years. I still think it's probably one of his finest collections on there.
Yeah. And also because of the loops and things like that as well, it sounds so fresh. So it fits in with the current landscape, doesn't it? And it's a unique sounding record. Nobody would make this record other than Bruce. It's only him who could do it.
And the interesting is, so where is the 83 sessions? You've got 18 songs and it feels too much. I think the balance in this, he doesn't overdo the same vibe too much. He does know when to add touches of different things in there. And I think it's because John Landau is obviously involved in the production. I'm guessing Chuck Plotkin was also in there.
Yeah.
So it's not just him on his own, and it really benefits. It's strongest on the disc, I think.
Well, what you're saying there is a really important point, is that, as I said earlier, this is the only album that is, as of the time of it being recorded, a complete record ready to go, whilst others, put it this way, others, and we'll probably discuss this as we go, I think the reason they say that is because obviously Perfect World is the final one. That's basically a compilation record. But the others, I think tracks were added to them in post for this box set to just fill them out, or something that he thought would benefit that record has been added to it, and I think that's what they, from reading the book, it's not in between the lines, I think that's what they're trying to allude to, but they don't outright say it.
I've read a few interviews where that's the case, because I think I've read that the project for tracks 2 started in 2018. So they brought Max Weinberg in to start doing overdubs. Ron Aniello had been given this bulk of work, and then they started, and some of the tracks from 2018 actually sit on albums that would probably be back to somewhere north of Nashville, which I know we're probably going to move on to next. Some of the songs on there were actually written or redubbed, rewritten, and recreated as part of that tracks 2 process.
That Somewhere North of Nashville is an interesting one. I feel like we're doing a disservice here, because we kind of spent the same amount of time on the past 2 records, but those 2 are so rich, and we could talk about them for hours, but I feel like we still have to talk about we can go back if we need to, I suppose. But Somewhere North of Nashville is the next album. So okay, so in the book it does say that these other albums are also considered companion pieces. And that's because they do, it's again, but then you could argue the 83 sessions is a companion piece. It might label that as a companion piece, actually, because that would be a companion to Born in the USA, simply because of the time, because all it is the time they're recorded is the same. And that's what he means by companion pieces. So this is recorded at the same time as Ghost of Tom Joad. So we're looking at 1995. And basically in the afternoon, what he does, and this is so poetic as well, in the afternoon, he records this sort of raucous country album, which it's more in line with it's a very basic version of alternative country in the 1990s in terms of sound, is what it is. The alternative country sound was really just getting to a point where it started to have a stereotypical sound. That's kind of what you're hearing here. He did Ghost of Tom Joad though at night, which is so poetic because it's such a nighttime album to record, isn't it? But
Tom Joad does sound like an album recorded of an evening, and I've still got a lot of love for that one. That's a real sort of quiet evening headphone album, that one.
And it's an album it's a sleeper album that a lot of people just sort of sleep on, and people only go for the title track as well to that one for a lot of them. But there's a lot of good tracks on that record, but Somewhere North of Nashville is a bit more in your face.
Well,
it's I mean, put it this way, the way we started hearing these were through the singles. Every album apart from the Garage Session had a single. When on day of release, obviously the first track you listen to is a Garage song, because you're going to put it on in order. So the first Repo Man was the single here, which is so in your face as a song. And a lot of this is in your face because you've even got there's 2 songs on here which were B-sides. There might be more, but there's 2 that I can think of that were B-sides to singles from Born in the USA, one of which is in your face anyway. Somehow they made it country and it's still just as in your face. And then they kind of mellowed the other one, which is Janie Don't You Lose Heart. So Stand On It's the more in your face one. But your thoughts on this record, just give me them, because I'll vibe off of what you're doing.
So I think some of this, and the majority of Ghost of Tom Joad, I think if Bruce, and then if you listen to where he went on the same period of time with Inyo, he could have dominated that scene. But at the same time, I think, and I've said this to you before, that some of these feel more like approximations of what he thinks is country based on any which way you can. And when I hear Repo Man and Detail Man, I say, if
and
he's not dancing
Delivery
with
Man
the
is another Man song.
It's a little bit better, but I just feel like, and Tiger Rose isn't what I was expecting. I feel like he's, and this is a similar fault or finding. I won't say fault because that's wrong. This is still music I wouldn't be able to produce. I just feel like he's writing for the genre rather than adjusting to the genre, if you see what I mean. So that stuff sounds more like his version of some bizarre barroom country honky tonk fight. And whereas stuff like Under a Big Sky, Silver Mountain, even elements
Silver
of
Mountain,
Delivery Man, Poor Side of Town, which is, I think that was a Johnny Cash song, wasn't it?
It was, no, Johnny Rivers wrote it. I think Johnny Cash might have sung it at one point. I know Johnny Rivers wrote it.
This stuff is is fantastic, and you could see
Yeah.
if he adjust, it might even fit elsewhere. But this is, and this is true of the same strong stuff on Twilight Hours. These are just frankly great Springsteen songs,
Yeah.
and they suit that have been adjusted, or whereas you feel like the rest of it, and it's great because the spontaneity of it, you feel like these are one-track sessions. These are, you can almost hit you like he's flipping through his notebook and saying, okay, this one's in A, 1, 2,
Yeah.
and off they go. And you
Yeah.
listen to Janie Don't Lose Heart, the Stand on It cover, you listen to Delivery Man. It works. It really does work. And it's one of the most fascinating documents of that time, because you would imagine in your mind, especially even if you look at the artwork and the photos that accompanied that period did you know they referred to that tour, the fans referred to the Ghost of Tom Joad tour as the Shut Up tour?
Yeah, because you've got to be quiet.
Shushing
It's such a
audiences.
quiet, it's such a quiet sort
And
of
if you
album, isn't it?
And so if you listen to that, and if you take credit that value, and this is why this is an important accompaniment album, I guess, you would think that it was a very dry and serious period for Springsteen.
Yeah.
Because the only note on the Ghost of Tom Joad where you think he was like, my best was never good enough, that's the only kind of light-hearted element on it. It's a beautiful album. I don't want to talk about that album because it's not part of this, but you've got Balboa Park, you've got Youngstown, you've got Highway 29, Dryline It, and Galveston Bay is one of his most important songs. But this shows that even during that, he was, that band were kicking it. They were having a great time. And it's the most spontaneous sounding album, even if Somewhere North of Nashville came nearly 30 years later again and got stapled onto it.
Yeah. Well, this is you. What you're saying there, I maybe should have said this earlier, but I think it's quite nice to reveal this now, because I don't know if this would have been anywhere else online, because it might be a quote that was said directly for the book, for the box set that Bruce has said. But Bruce effectively says along the lines of, this was basically recorded. It's a band playing in a certain style just to lighten the mood, because that band a lot of that band also played on Ghost of Tom Joad, and just to keep everything light and to make everything a bit happy just around them, they recorded sort of these happy country songs. But obviously then why wouldn't you press record? Why wouldn't you just press it just in case? So I don't know if this was ever intended for any kind of actual release, but obviously they just press record just to make sure that it's all okay.
Does it say where they're recorded?
It may well do.
Was it one of his Frill Hill ones, or?
Well, it would have been the same studio as Ghost of Tom Joad. Put it that way. As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that was.
Let me have a look.
That was recorded at home for him, as it were. That was his Frill Hill Colt's Neck.
Yeah, I think it was because he was living in California at the time, wasn't he?
If you've got your own session studio, I mean, it's like I was watching this. One of those sessions, those in the room things with Brad Whitford and Joe Perry. And they were saying very early on in the first sessions they did, they taped over the red light. Yeah. And by the time they were on their third, they just left it recording all the time, because if that red light was on, they froze up. So maybe, if you've got Springsteen, you're just recording. And if you don't get anything, tape over it. If you do, in this instance, stick it in the vault for 30 years.
Yeah, that's effectively it. I mean, yeah, as I say, the same place as Ghost. It doesn't actually say here, but it is the same studio as Ghost of Tom Joad. It does say that in here, I think. So, but yeah, what's also weird. Yeah, go on.
Checked. Yeah, it's Colt. It's Frill Hill East, Colt's Woods. So yeah, he would have been home in Jersey.
I mean, what's so something interesting about this record as well is that the same pedal, because the pedal steel guitar is, put it this way, I think, to be honest, as I say, because it is kind of very alternate country and not within the country space, I feel like Bruce probably was a bit, I don't know, maybe he felt like an imposter, or he just didn't know how to write a traditional style country record. And to cover that, there is a lot of pedal steel guitar, as in too much, probably, if anything. But what I will say, and that's my own opinion, but what I will say is that the guy doing the pedal steel guitar is the same person who did it on Tom Petty's Wildflowers album. And and he actually returns again in Springsteen's story later down the line. It says it in the book, I can't remember where, but again, he comes up in Springsteen's story again and does do some, actually it might be Twilight Hours, it might be Twilight albums, because there's a few bits of pedal steel on there. He might have turned up there as well. So obviously he's forming these contacts at this point to keep for later on.
I think it's also this kind of finding a voice, finding his solo record voice.
Yeah, that's what the whole box set is really. Is him trying to find his voice as a solo artist without the band.
Rifkin, isn't it?
What's that?
Marty Rifkin
That's the one.
Yeah, I mean that guy. I mean, what a session musician, what a player.
Yeah.
But I think you touched on something there. I was just thinking maybe Springsteen, much like, and again, Twilight Hours is very much like that. So knew he wanted to create these lush kind of soundscapes. He knew he wanted to write an album in what became Ghost of Tom Joad, in this kind of country tinged voice to represent the area he's writing in. And maybe he's doing these exercises I think, to find that voice, in the same way if you've got, like, if you look at De Niro will drive a taxi cab around New York, or again for Nick Cage with an ambulance around you. All of these people, and it's appropriate to talk about two Scorsese films because we've got Faithless coming up, but they go and they get experience in that. Maybe he's writing a lot of songs, he's practicing this genre, so that when he does hit that voice, he's got the right balance. You can't say there's any country on too much pedestal on Ghost of Tom Joad. Everything is in the right level. So it's almost like he's using these exercises to refine that voice.
Yeah, exactly. And as you know, the 90s were a period where Americana music was starting as well. And I think at the time as well, Bruce was being put into the Americana category, even if because it always surprised me is that when you type in, famous Americana artists, he's usually number one that comes up. And I think it started at this period. It might not now, because we now define the genre a bit more. Country music's a bit more global now as well. But he always seems to come up. And I think at the time he was probably starting to get put into that, trying to lean into it a bit as well. Definitely even Ghost of Tom Joad, that is an Americana album through and through. I think the whole box set is Americana, even with drum loops, because there's electronic elements that go into Americana, and that's looking back at it retrospectively now, obviously. But I think the whole album is the whole box set is. But this album and then the next two, I feel, really do hit that sound, and I think this next one is very much an Americana record. And as you know, I think the one afterwards is even more so. But
I mean, you're the expert on what's Americana. I'll take my
I try my hardest to be an expert, because the next album's forgive me if I mispronounce, is it Inyo? Is it pronounced Inyo?
I realized recently I've been mispronouncing the name of one of my favorite albums for now, but it's celebrating its 20-something anniversary, because I've been calling it Z for this time, but they're an American band, so it's Z. So it's really, you pronounce it however you're happy pronouncing the damn thing, unless someone's going to come to you and say, "Hey, I'm from Inyo." It's Inyo. I'm going to say Inyo.
Yeah, I'm going to say Inyo for now. And this, I think every album in this, and I'm including Twilight Hours, which is my least favorite, they're all sleeper albums. They all get better on more listens. I think I'm not saying it's going from bad. It's going from bad to less bad potentially, but they are getting better.
Twilight, but,
it will come. Don't you worry.
It's interesting you say that. I'm going to say Inyo was an immediate for me.
For me, it was. I was going to say this is the surpriser. This is the surpriser. It was immediate, and it still only got better, but it was the surprise package of the whole set for me.
Yeah, I mean, so many, much like the first tracks, and I'm sure tracks 3 will be. There's stuff you kind of know is going to be in the canon. There's stuff that has been rumored, but Inyo, I couldn't have thought that after the Ghost of Tom Joad, the Shut the Door, and that period, and he's written about it extensively, because it wasn't that long after it that he decided to get the band back together, and we know where history took him after that. But the fact that he had, during that tour, recorded this album, and to me it's a delicious album. It's just so much on there. It builds so naturally on what came from Ghost of Tom Joad, but it adds so much more flavor, so much more sound, so many more voices. It's just a delicious album.
So this is considered the spiritual predecessor to Ghost of Tom Joad, as in this is the natural progression between those records. It's still got a lot of that Steinbeckian feel, but it's with a much more. I don't know if it's Tex-Mex or if it's just
It is.
Mexican
I'd say Tex-Mex.
infused.
He does tend to deal. I'm not a fan of quoting Bono, but he said, I think he referred to America as Springsteen's hometown.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
words to that effect, with some old Celtic nonsense thrown in as well.
Yes.
But I think he trades more in that area, because a lot of his songs, and a lot of songs on here, deal with those people that are longing to be part of the American dream, and it's becoming typically relevant again now. But I think he stays with, that sort of flavor of Tex-Mex, that area down there, and it's just adding those voices to the voices of Tom Joad, and they were hinted at in Tom Joad. If you look at some of those songs like Across the Border, or even Straight Time has some of it, but in there, is it Sonolia, the fifth track, Sonolia Cowboys, Sonola Cowboys again, all of this stuff hints at those voices, but this feels like giving them a much fuller voice on there, and leaning into their flavors.
Yeah, this album is tied into two albums, Ghost of Tom Joad, obviously, but it's also heavily tied into Devils and Dust, which you might think's weird because he released other stuff before that came out. But songs from this album sessions, whether they ended up in, I think they were possibly re-recorded, but those songs ended up on Devils and Dust, so it has got a tie to both of them, and I can hear that. There is that kind of a Tex-Mex kind of. It's not it's not outwardly there like on Devils and Dust, but there's a subtle flavor on Devils and Dust which I can hear. And as I say, I just got the book in front of me for this one because it's probably the one I know the least about, yet it's one of my most listened to songs from the set, albums from the set, should I say. It's just lush in terms of production, isn't it? And it's
delicious. Like I say, that's the only word that comes to mind within you for me, is delicious. It's just such a feast.
It's one of those albums that works so well and is so good. It's really hard to think what to say about it because it's kind of like it's just
you just have to listen to it.
You just have to listen to it. Yeah,
go and pick up Our Lady of Monroe. Go and listen to The Last Charro.
The Last Charro is one of my favorites. I love that song. It's so good.
Yeah, there's nothing at fault on this album. It's one of the whole box set, even Twilight Hours. The quality is always the quality is never going to dip below good or very good. But Inyo is one of those ones where you think, why? I know that this is one of those that he had to go back, because if you look at the players on some of those, even on the 2-disc version, why is Ron and the Yellow being quoted on here when this was recorded after Joad? Because some of it's been built up later, but there could have been had this been dropped.
I've got a feeling
again, these like alternative history albums.
Yeah, I've got a feeling this is one where he's added material post the majority of it being recorded as well, just to flesh it out a bit. And I've got a feeling there's, from some of them, there's, my guess would be he's probably got outtakes from these records as well that he's probably not put out, and put out other songs that he feels fits the project better from post the time as well, potentially. Even
he very much became, I think, perhaps it became a project like taking bits from that, like a mechanic, almost taking apart from this end and putting it in that. I think the one I heard, I think it was Adelita, and possibly even the title track was released, was one of the later songs that was then dropped in to complete an album's worth of set. So perhaps he only had maybe 8 or 9 songs, and it's not enough, and the project was like, okay, well, look, let's move on.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of it, I think, was written around the border as well when he was traveling around there. So he's taken in the sounds. I say he's taken in the sounds. I feel like he's probably more taken in the aesthetic rather than anything else. But he's writing what he feels fits that aesthetic. And every album on this is exceptionally what we should call Springsteen. He's not chasing things. He's chasing genres a couple of times, but it's still his version of the genre. It couldn't be anyone else to make that record. Maybe someone north of Nashville, someone else might. But even Twilight Hours is his version of that 60s American songbook. So it is still him. I think Somewhere North of Nashville is probably the only one where you could make the argument it isn't. I think that actually segues quite nicely into Faithless, because talking of things not being him, this is one of the few bits of commission writing that Bruce has ever done, and this album is, so it was recorded in 2005 and 2006. Now the book gives another date. The book here gives a date of it gives those dates as the recording, but I think it gives a different date for when the film should have been released, which is a bit bizarre, if I'm right. Or that might have been when he got commissioned to do it.
What does it?
Early? Let me see if I can find it, because you got to remember, I'm looking at Locke's writing.
It was around the Devils and Dust stuff, wasn't it? And he was in California.
Yes, exactly. That's when it was recorded. Yes, it was between Devils and Dust and the Seeger sessions is when it was recorded. But when was the film meant to be out? So let's have a look. I've got a feeling that's when we talk about. Oh, you know what? I've got a feeling that might even be on the Perfect World section. It might actually say it, because that's where this book says, oh, by the way, some of these albums weren't actually conceived as albums at the time. Does it say that? No, it doesn't even say that. Oh, well, maybe I'm misremembering, or it's somewhere else in the book. It's got to be somewhere. But anyway, I won't waste any more time on it. But yeah, a film that never happened. You probably know the story better than me on this one, so I'll let you go.
Well, I think the interesting thing, like I said earlier, is that the line that none of these albums are what you would expect Springsteen to work in. I think anyone that's listened and spent time with his material wouldn't be surprised by any of them, with the exception of Twilight Hours.
Yeah.
And the stuff that you would expect Springsteen to write on Perfect World does sound a little bit like someone asked ChatGPT to create it.
Yeah.
Faithless as a, like I say, there's only really a handful of directors that you think could have the power to get Springsteen to write a whole soundtrack. He obviously saw success with Streets of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Born in the USA was originally written for, in theory, was it written for Born on the 4th of July or something? And
it might have been,
and then later gave the director, so he kept it, and then as an apology gave for the same director Light of Day later.
Yeah.
Which
there's a few individual tracks that he's done.
So there's individual, so it's not a massive surprise, but yeah, I mean, Scorsese is probably the only one of the few directors with that clout. So there was a story. So in 2003, there was a story in Variety that ran that basically there's a writer called Thomas Edison, and he'd written a Western epic called St. Agnes's Stand, and Scorsese was at that point. So DreamWorks optioned it. DreamWorks was the studio founded by David Geffen and Steven Spielberg, so plenty of financial backing. And Scorsese wrote this, was set to direct this. This is a story of basically a reluctant hero who saves a nun and a group of children from an Apache tribe. And it was basically, it was described as a sort of a brooding Western that touches on a lot of things, including failed heroes, forgotten past, and faith, and which it sounds, given Scorsese's back catalogue and what he's dabbled in with films that aren't about gangsters, it does tend to have a religious element. Even they do, and so it fits that era, that time, and that description fits exactly with Faithless.
Yes, exactly. And I think what really interests me, and I've got a bit of a theory about this one, is that we know that this was recorded without Bruce seeing any footage, because the film, I don't know if it went into production or not, but it wasn't necessarily made fully. But he made this album without seeing any footage, as far as I can see. Now, could this have been his warm up? That's my little head just thinks, could we have had more?
Well, it was probably based on a book, and
Yeah,
then the screenplay would have been written, because I think there was talk about someone being given a screenplay,
yeah,
and that might in itself, and someone gave him the this is, but he must have been given an outline of story.
yeah,
How much of it, whether any footage was done, whether anyone was assigned, we'll never know.
yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to be released. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have had it on this box set.
Yes, and
But
that's yeah. Go on.
it works as an album in its own right. It's a
Yes,
very brooding album, and it is definitely one of the sleepers on the album, without on the set. Whether he could have improved, I don't. Having not read the book, but having read similar of that ilk, I'd say it works. I don't know if he would have gone back and done more, because it sounds finished.
yeah, it
The
does to
tricky
me.
thing is to think about it. If you think about Eddie Vedder's Into the Wild soundtrack, that
Mm,
would have been based. That could have been based on a book. It could have been based on a few visuals. It's
mm,
not like you can take the entire album as an album, because if you're doing that,
mm.
you'd probably take out some of the what are clearly the instrumental
Yeah,
elements,
the
and then you're down.
atmospheric tracks. Yeah,
Then you're down what, 3, 4 tracks.
yeah,
So you're only looking at handfuls of songs, and some of them are only a minute or two outside. But I
mm,
think it's a strong album.
yeah. No, definitely. It's and also we usually hear Bruce when he sings about anything to do with faith, religion, etc. It's usually metaphorical. It's used as a
Mm,
metaphor for something. Here, it is. This is as close as you're going to get to a Bruce Springsteen version of gospel music as well, which is also interesting. Um, Production on this is brilliant in my opinion. It's the most Americana thing Bruce has ever done, other than the Sega sessions by
mm,
a long way. You could argue that this is more Americana in terms of it fits in with the wider mainstream world of Americana, to be honest, than Sega sessions. But also the production is, so the book tells you more about the choirs. Most of the time
okay.
it is Patty and some other singers that they just had. My Master's Hand, Bruce is the whole choir. He
Is
he
he?
overdubs his vocals for that. Yeah, the whole choir is him as far as the book's concerned, I think. So
I think I
that's
read that his
really good.
kids are on one of them. I think
Yeah,
it's the children. Is it All God's Children?
I think it's that one, yeah, because that's got the most amount of people on it when it lists in the book how many people were in that choir. So I assume a couple of them were his kids. Because I basically saw Patty's name and just skipped the rest because I thought
Mm.
I wouldn't know who they are, these session players. So I kind of just read her name, went, okay, it's a big choir. Okay, cool. But yeah, no, interesting that they didn't choose to get in a choir to do any of it. They just took who was in the studio and around at the time to do it, which was cool. Which it gives it this more of a rustic tone, which I think is what the film would probably have been going for as well. Yeah, and the interesting part to me
Maybe it
is,
would have been redone. You know?
well, I feel like that would have fit what the film would have been going for, though. That rustic
Yeah.
sort of feel to it, and also it's got to be like it's like just your average everyday person in a church, singing these
Mm.
songs.
Well, so here's the thing. I was thinking of this just now. So I was you don't present like, and I might be completely wrong, from what I've read, you don't present a finished album as the soundtrack. You get
No.
like what's called rough mixes and stuff like that, and guide mixes. And I remember there's a Mogwai album. They'd been commissioned to write a film, and they will never say who it was for, and there's no way of tracing it in the same way because they're not as big. But they submitted the music, but the director and the people involved obviously didn't quite have the understanding of the fact that these weren't finished articles. These were like
Mm.
guide pieces and stuff like that, and it was
Ah.
rejected. And it never stood. So you have to wonder, actually, because there are some. So at some point, Springsteen must have submitted rough guide versions, rough mixes of these. You wouldn't, and having sat on it for so long is probably why we're now presented with what are very much finished songs on here,
Yeah.
without a film with which for them to sit. So it might well have been that had the film moved forward and we know, Scorsese's a pain, as we're not. I'm very mindful to keep my language clean. As he's a pain for editing and long involved processes, things might have shifted. There might have been scenes that needed to be extended, reshot, and so it might well be that before it was finished, some of these might have been tweaked. But I'm guessing at some point Springsteen and Aniello said, you know what, nuts to this. Let's finish this. Let's finalize this. Let's mix this down. Let's make these rough mixes into finished songs.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's something we haven't mentioned. I can't believe we haven't, to be honest. Is that Bruce has spent, as he said, the process started in 2018, and a lot of that is him going back and touching up these songs and finishing them, etc. So even something like him using his own voice as the choir on his My Master's Hand, that could have been a later addition for all we know, and that could have just been done because that's who he had in the studio. It was him on his own at this time. He just wanted to just get something done, and he wanted, or maybe that's even a guide. That may well have been a guide for a potential future choir, but he liked it and just kept it. So and
has applied the lessons he learned since then, since recording this in 2004 to that.
Yeah,
his voice would have aged, as you can hear, when he was singing in a different register for Western Stars, and he would have applied that variety in his voice.
Yeah, and that's something we should touch upon, is that Bruce is under the impression, and he is correct, in terms of technicalities, not what you prefer and your opinions on something. In terms of technicalities, his voice is probably at the best it has ever been. Currently, he is, when he's doing things like Twilight Hours and Western Stars, those albums, that's some of the best Springsteen voice you'll hear. Even Only the Strong Survive, which, albeit a covers album, that is some of the best you'll hear his voice. But I prefer his voice when he was younger, don't get me wrong. But that a vocal coach will probably say that's the best he's ever sung in theory, but it's not what I prefer. But
I would say I'd say the best is on Letter to You. I'd say he's taken the lessons from expanding those genres to Letter to You.
Yes, that is a very strong album vocally, I think, and I mean, we're coming up to later era Bruce here, so we might as well move onto Twilight Hours, which, as you probably could tell, is our least favorite. So when we say it's our least favorite, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's terrible. It's not a bad record in any stretch of the word. I just don't think it's necessarily good. Does that make sense? It's more of a neutral kind of thing going on with this one.
Again, in the same way that any car is a fantastic feat of engineering and has to be admired because it's you're making all of these things move forward. You listen to any of these songs on Twilight Hours, and I think I could spend a year in the studio and I couldn't touch this.
Yeah.
But I think I've been thinking about it because leading up to this was the first time really that I started listening to it, because prior I'd listened to that Sunday Love, which was the single released for it, and it just did nothing for me.
That song took ages for me to like.
It made me think of, and it's fitting that Springsteen thought of releasing the album on Valentine's Day one year. But it made me think. It still makes me think of the sessions from the Blood Brothers EP. The song Without You, when he's listing the days of it, but that has more smart. I think what I've been thinking about these songs, there are some good songs, but I think much like it's him finding his voice, he wanted to write. So that album goes back to 2014 when he knew he wanted to do something outside of this and embrace what you've said, those 50s, 60s lush, but didn't know where to take it, what voice it was. And I'm thinking, what makes a good song for people? Like, so you've got a band that's got a hit, they've got hit after hit, and they want to, and someone else, they want to give someone else a song. So, and the mistake that's often made is that they then try and write a song in the style of that artist for them. Springsteen never did that. He wrote Hungry Heart. Was it Hungry Heart written for the Ramones?
Yes, it was. Yes, I believe.
You know,
Yeah.
and but he never went, right, I'm going to give this to Ramones, so I'm going to write it as if it's a Ramones song.
Yeah.
He never wrote Blinded by the Light was given away, but he never wrote it as if it was a man for it. He's writing
No.
Bruce Springsteen songs
Yeah.
and then letting other people have them. And but what I feel with Twilight Hours, and to a lesser extent some of the material on Western Stars, is that he's not writing Bruce Springsteen songs. I feel like he's going out to deliberately write
Yeah.
Burt Bacharach songs, Glenn Campbell songs, and that's where the songs that I feel are the weakest on there fail,
Yeah.
because they don't sound like a natural voice for him.
No.
But there is some really good stuff on there, to my mind. I've got a lot of time for High Sierra. I've got a
I
lot
was
of
going to
time
mention
for
that one.
Lonely Town as well, to a certain
Yeah, that's my
degree.
other favorite one.
Another you.
Yeah.
But like bloody hitchhiking off the Western Stars, that
Yeah.
the second you hear those the strings come in, and they don't feel organic. It just feels like I'm going to write a song in the style of, and they feel very formulaic as a result, and they don't feel like you.
Yeah.
Whereas songs like High Sierra, they feel like a Springsteen song written in a way that would work with that genre.
Yeah.
Whereas Follow the Sun and bloody September
Yeah.
Kisses, come on, Bruce.
Yeah. 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 No, it's at least we're consistent, because our two least favorite songs on this album, being this and Somewhere North of Nashville, it's for the same reason, isn't it? It's because, you know, it does feel like Bruce is trying to write for a genre rather than writing songs that are Bruce songs that would fit the genre, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. My favorite two songs are Lonely Town and High Sierra. Lonely Town, I think, is too long.
I
I know
a lot of these songs are, and a lot of the reason
Yeah.
for that is because they add sweeping strings and more things in there, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, get to the chorus. I'll get to the next verse. But I would say, yeah.
Interestingly about those strings, by the way, a lot of them are samples. That's in the book.
I'm not at all surprised,
Yeah.
because they sound like it.
Yeah. That's what's so that's a really weird thing, because I think the reason why is because this wasn't a fully realized project, and I don't think he knew if it was going to be. I don't think he wanted to pay for the orchestra to be there to do it, which makes sense.
Their guides, if
Yeah.
much like the Faithless stuff, had it gone, and
Yeah.
does that apply with Western Stars as well? I've never looked at that.
I don't know, because it doesn't say anything about it. Western Stars gets a lot of mentioning in the book during this period, and yeah, I mean, put it this way: this album, this is an 8-year process. This album, in the same way Western Stars was as well, both written in 2010. Songs were always kept separate, though. He knew what was going on, what projects. It comes across. Put it this way: it always comes across as if this one was the secondary project, but it comes across as he would have been happy to release this if he thought it was of better quality than Western Stars. I think that's how it reads to me. Again,
if he had released it, I think it could probably have. I think this would have. I think there's a tendency with legacy artists, as you know, this is what we refer to, for certain media outlets to put praise on them regardless.
Yeah.
We know, I've read about how, I've forgotten his name, the chap who ran Rolling Stone. What's his name?
Oh, you're pushing my memory there.
Sean Wenner.
Yeah.
Basically told that, no, the U2 album is the #1 album this year, regardless of what you're saying. The U2 album is the best album this year, and it's the one they gave away for free.
Yeah.
This is the #1 album of the year, no matter what you say. And I think there's a tendency to treat everything that legacy artists do as if it's manna from heaven, without actually saying, well, hang on, yeah, it's fantastic that they're still recording.
Yeah.
Because had he released this and that, he wasn't a legacy artist, and I hate using that phrase, but I think it would have received an even cooler reaction than Lucky Town and Human Touch.
Yeah, I think he definitely made the right. I mean, Western Stars feels a lot more on brand. Put it that way. Yeah. I think that's something that, again, this whole box set is part of this. You know, we're seeing a post COVID Springsteen is a Springsteen who is very much worried about his legacy. A post-COVID music world is now the world where the general public is reappraising, because during people just listen to more, and they just listen to some of the later works of these great artists and started reappraising them. And the narrative was, if Bob Dylan released a new album, other than some critics, there would be, everybody would say, "Oh God, Bob Dylan's released a new album. Oh, it's rubbish." Well, now it's the opposite. It's, we need a new Bob Dylan album soon because he might not be around for so long, etc. And people want to, and it's very different now. And
they're
I
almost
think,
more forgiving of filler.
yeah, exactly. But also less dismissive of great work by an older artist as well. There is that, and I feel like Western Stars has gained even more praise, rightfully so, because I think it is a very solid, decent record. But this album is going to be praised higher than it probably should be. I think I think that's what it is.
Western Stars is another interesting one, because I feel much like this, there are songs in there where he's writing and it feels like he's writing for that genre.
Yeah.
But when you get a song like Western Stars itself is great.
Yeah.
But when you get a song like Drive Fast or Stuntman, that's just up there with his best writing.
I know that. And that's the only song on the album that I can hear.
In isolation, it works. The rest, you almost need to be listening to it because it's of a style, it's of a piece. Sleepy Joe's Cafe, he couldn't have got to that without Inu.
No.
And it has a certain bounce, and you can imagine it in a different way, but it doesn't work unless it's on that album.
Yeah.
Drive Fast for Stuntman works on any album. I'd go so far as to say, if we're still talking to Twilight Hours, I'd say High Sierra would work anywhere. Because again, it's not overly done production-wise either.
I think High Sierra is the one that works outside of the context of the album. Even Lonely Town, I feel the album makes that song better because it is so different to a lot of the rest of the album as well. And I don't mean that in I don't mean that in like a way of, oh, it shows how good it is. What I mean by what I mean by that is that it's a break from the rest. It's kind of like Meeting Across the River on Born to Run. A lot of people say it's the worst track in the album. I say it's the most necessary because it needs to have that break from what's there. Meeting Across the River.
Meeting Across the River, yeah.
A lot of people say it's his worst, but the album needs it.
Meeting Across the River is a really strong song, and if you heard it but the only reason it suffers is because of what it's in between.
Yeah, exactly.
So Meeting the River is track 6 on one?
7. It's second to last. I know that track listing off by heart. Is second to last. That's the only one I can do it for. The only album.
Which is a shocker. Meeting Across the River suffers because you're waiting for Jungle Land.
Yeah.
If you put Across the River, I don't have it in front of me, but put this in your pocket so it looks like you're carrying a friend. Go for it. There's so much in there. She's the One is a bit naff, or Nights for Distant Era. But if you put Meeting Across the River anywhere else, it holds strong.
Yeah.
I don't think I could say the same for Lonely Town.
Well, no. What I mean by it is it serves the same function though, in terms of it gives you a break from the sound of the rest of the album. It's because Meeting Across the River is a completely different sounding song to the rest of Born to Run, and I feel like Lonely Town is that for Twilight Hours. It's the production's so much more sparse. And there's so much less of it, and it benefits it.
Is Jungle Land?
No, that's the thing. It doesn't get followed up by anything that's different. I think people will see it as one of the best songs on the record, but it's a necessary break on it. But then again, all of these albums, this track listing may not have been the track listing that it would have been originally been if it was released as well. This is a 2025 Bruce Springsteen finalizing the track listings and putting them out there. It's not. We're not looking at a 2018 Bruce Springsteen even finalizing these and doing it. So it is very different. We should move on to.
I'm hoping we don't get another 10 of these on track 3.
No, I'm hoping not. I'm very much hoping not. But we'll see when that comes, because that, as we know, that is confirmed. But Perfect World is the last one. And now
I'm
this
curious
one,
what your takes are on Perfect World.
I'm gonna slightly rely on your takes as well, because
Oh,
it's the one I have the least experience with. Because
really?
yeah, because I'm not really much of a compilation person. I don't put on compilation albums, and to me, look, Bruce can hide it as much as he wants and try and say this is an album I put together that I felt was cohesive and the
Mm,
songs all fit each other and thematically works. I'm like, no, it's a compilation album of tracks you just had, and
okay.
it's interesting, and it reads like a compilation album in terms of the track listing as well, as in the first three being co-writes with Joe Gretzky.
Mm.
Like that reads like that's a compilation record to me. You group them together for that reason, not for the album. Like that's how it
It
feels
feels
to
like a
me.
bonus disc almost to you.
It feels like a bonus disc,
Mm,
exactly that. Um, I
okay.
like individual songs here.
Okay.
Altogether, I am not like put it this way, I can't remember half the songs.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I find really hard is remembering these songs. But the songs I do remember uh, for reasons that I'm not proud of. I remember I'm Not Sleeping. Um, probably because it is the most Springsteen-y song. This is billed as the most E Street album without it being an E Street album. That's the most E Street song.
I think that's just
Um,
another, much
it's a
like this, it's
marketing
just like,
ploy.
how do we sell this to people that might be sitting on the fence? Let's tell them there's an E
Yeah,
Street sounding album in there.
yeah.
Because
It's
again,
marketing.
this is solo Springsteen stuff in the same way
Mm,
that the Tunnel of Love album was like, how do I present my voice without alienating the crowd? I will
yeah.
use elements of E Street Band on different songs, but none of these are full band songs. And I
Yes.
will say that of those first three songs, I'm Not Sleeping, Idiot's Delight, and Another Thin
Mm.
Line. Those are fantastic Joe Grusecki songs.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it. That's what I'll
Yeah.
say.
Are they good Bruce Springsteen songs?
They feel like so Code of Silence comes to mind because that was a similar one. It was another
Yeah.
he'd written with Joe Grus and used it to open a lot of the reunion tour.
Mm.
But it's what, two chords, three chords?
Yeah.
These are
Yeah. Not
very
many.
much like, you almost feel like he's come back off a tour or he's come back in there and
Yeah.
he's just blowing some dust off of Joe to give Joe,
Yeah.
and all credit to Joe Grusecki. He does a lot of work. I think
He's a good artist.
he's also like, it's his archery, his musician is his part-time job. He's a
Mm.
special education teacher from what I understand. He
Is
he
he?
works with kids with disabilities and
I didn't
all of
know
these
that.
things. So yeah, he's this stuff that he does, and I think he's got a
Ah.
book out as well. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, a lot of what he does, this isn't his main gig, and
Oh,
a
that's
lot of the work he
amazing.
does is for charity, and he does all these big charities. So a lot of credit to him. So more
Yeah.
credit as well to Bruce, with his friend. Here's some great tunes. Go
Yeah.
out and play them. To put them on here, I, I like Summer Perfect World. I
Yeah.
tend to look at it much like you, as almost like, okay, so the Blood Brothers EP has got some great songs on there, some really strong. I'll listen to that version of High Hopes and
Mm.
Without You and things like that. They're great. They're good songs. But they're not stuff you would put on the main album.
No. Yeah.
And as much as they try, he keeps saying he's tried to get Rain in the River on different
Mm.
projects. It doesn't work. It doesn't complete as a song. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
quite close the circle.
It's one of
And
those songs. It's a bit like Rainmaker
mm,
on Letter to You for me. It's notably different to everything else, but because it's surrounded by great tunes, I'll forgive it being there, and I'm happy
it's
with
got a
that.
fantastic beat on it. It
Yeah.
really is one of the
Yeah.
biggest beats he's had. And I've, like I say, it's on the 2-disc version, so it does sound a lot better on the stereo than it does
Yeah.
on your streamers, and it really does bounce out.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm going to say that the stuff that sounds like Cutting Knife, for example,
Yeah.
you are my. It doesn't work in his mouth. It sounds too much of a cumbersome
Yeah.
phrase. You are my.
Yeah.
It could have been a good song. You Lifted Me Up is nice. Perfect
Yeah.
World is okay.
If I
Blind
Could Be
Man
Your
is pretty good.
Lover, that's all
It,
right.
the Great Depression is great. It's almost really
Mm.
sort of quite anthemic, and there's a little sort of interesting sort of lyrics. It's love gone wrong, and it feels like it's strong. But yeah, I'm going to say If I Could Only Be Your Lover is really the strongest
Yeah.
on that disc, and I feel I think I've said this to you recently. If you stuck that on the Philadelphia sessions, it wouldn't be a million miles away from the same
Yes,
theme.
I think if
It's that brooding deep in thought, and it
I
makes
think
me
it
think of the higher the Wrecking Ball bonus song that swallowed up in the belly of a whale. It's that
well, I've got a
down in the bottom
feeling.
pocket vibe.
I've got a feeling that If I Could Be Your Lover might even come from that period.
Well,
Let me
you've got
have
the
a
book.
look. Bear with me. It
You've
is
probably
in the
got the
book.
dates.
It is in the book. Let me have a look. I think I remember that. Because obviously things like I think You Lifted Me Up. I think that was originally meant to be on Wrecking Ball, but he said it wasn't political enough, something along those lines.
Yeah,
If I
Wrecking
Could
Ball
Only Be
is
Your
one of his
Lover.
most pointed, isn't it?
Oh no, sorry. The Great Depression and If I Could Be Your Lover was meant for Wrecking Ball, I think, potentially. Oh no, hang on. No, Rain in the River was potentially going to be on Wrecking Ball as well. A lot of this is meant to be on Wrecking Ball. Great Depression, If I Could Be Your Lover, yeah, almost got on Wrecking Ball. Yeah, a lot of this actually is almost on Wrecking Ball. But as I say, it goes back. A lot of it goes back to the Streets of Philadelphia session. In fact, it's Rain in the River that does. Sorry, it's Rain in the River that does. That goes back that far, which surprises me actually.
Which one? Which of them? One of them's got. Some of them very much got a '90s voice too.
That's what I thought. Rain in the River goes back as a song to the Streets of Philadelphia session. I don't think it means it was necessarily recorded then, but
One
it
of them's
does
good
go back that
his
far.
voice. There's one of them I can't remember without listening to it again. I haven't listened to that one for a while. It does have that sort of '90s voice in terms of the pitch of his voice.
That is what's a bit weird about this record and the end, is that the voice does change in terms of its tone and its timbre and everything quite a lot.
Here's a question for you then, and I'm curious. This is for you. So if High Hopes was made up of stuff until that point, and High Hopes was, when was High Hopes? High Hopes would have been
2014.
So this stuff is all, nothing goes back older than that. So he would have taken those songs, would have been in the vault, but chose not to put them onto High Hopes.
Yeah.
And instead gave us, some of the stuff that's on High Hopes. I mean,
High Hopes has, I would say about 4 or 5 tracks that I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, a few of them, like just like Firewood's a great Springsteen track. That is just a Springsteen later career. I know, that's the weird thing. Yeah, that's the weird part. But it comes across as a great Springsteen track, and he could have done that I reckon he could have done that at any point, and happily it would have fit on most albums from the 2000s period, to be fair, that he did. It would have fit on The Rising, it would have fit on Magic, would have fit on on Working on Dream. It just would have fit.
So at some point he's juggling up these songs, many of which questionable, and he's going, right, these are going on High Hopes, but I'm earmarking these really quality ones like Blind Man, and to put on another compilation later.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Yeah, I mean, High Hopes also, I guess, High Hopes, most of which aren't they are, they're all recorded during the tour period. So I guess because a lot of these songs on Perfect World they were already recorded and would have been recorded pre High Hopes. I got a feeling with High Hopes he wanted to just record things brand new, so he'd had a choice of either re-recording them or recording ideas he might have only had demos of the stuff on High Hopes. I mean, A Hunter of the Invisible Game is a good song from High Hopes. Down in the Hole is a good song. I quite like that.
Game, I think, but I think he had a fantastic idea and a fantastic title, but didn't quite know what else to do with it.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of the albums like.
Did you say you like High Hopes?
Oh no, it's my least favorite Springsteen album. Don't worry.
No, as a song. I was going to say.
Oh, as a song. Oh no, High Hopes. I do like High Hopes as a song.
Which version? Do you take this one, or do you take the Greatest Hits era one?
That's good. This one's okay. I think this one's got better production. The other one's more raw.
Okay.
So whatever mood I'm in will be the one I want to pick. Usually I go to raw over more production, so I probably would take the 90s version rather than the 2000s, but it was 2010s, sorry, but yeah.
I'd say The Wall for me on High Hopes is just, and again, that was a Joe Grusecki.
Yeah, that's Joe Grusecki.
He had the idea.
Yeah.
He had the idea, and it's just that line in there. I think I hear Robin McNamara says he's sorry just for Kiss Off Fair.
Yeah.
For all of that, American Skin. I mean, I'd like to just delete that from existence, that version, but that's
Yeah, yeah, because I think there was a live version of that before, wasn't it? That was released, wasn't it?
yeah, it was on the
The
New
the
York
Essential or
or
whatever, wasn't it?
reunion one. No, it was the
Yeah,
reunion
a
one. I don't
reunion,
think
was
we
it?
ever got the studio version of it. They might
Yeah.
have re-released it now because I know you went to try to do it. But yeah,
Mm.
let's take this really passionate thing and let Tom Morello give it an 80s power
Yeah,
ballad.
I know.
Solo. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
I
I mean,
know.
Perfect World sounds almost like a bonus disc. But if you took some of the strongest stuff and you put it with some of the strongest stuff from High Hopes, I think you might have a better one.
Well, I'm gonna say we need to probably give our overall thoughts on the box set as a whole. I will let you go first, and I will bounce off you.
As a whole,
Yeah, as a whole, how would you sit with this box? What are your thoughts on it as a whole? It's hard because actually, if it was tracks number one, then you could do that. But because this is all separate projects, it's a bit harder to do. But try the best you can, I guess.
what like how would I rank it? Or
Well, just your
Hmm.
overall thoughts on it. Like, where did you think it hit the mark? Do you think it's done what it needs to do, or is it more of a historical artifact just to be interested in? All this kind of stuff.
No, I still stand by, even with Twilight Hours and the couple of on Perfect World, because we're comparing these to stuff like Darkness and the two Born albums, Tunnel of-
Yeah.
and even later benchmarks like Magic or The Rising. Anything is going to be if you compared this to anyone else's offering, it's an embarrassment of riches. This is stuff
Yeah.
that he's had in his vaults for 40 plus years in some instances.
Mm.
This is more music than some people have put out in their entire careers.
Yeah.
And the quality, even on the songs that aren't quite good, never dips below really good.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I'd say it's strong to excellent. If you look at the sheer journey of his songwriting, it's fascinating. If you look at
Mm.
it as a example of how he went from this decision to that decision and an alternate history, it's still fascinating. And there are so many songs on here across these 7 albums that I think you could pull out and sit in amongst his released work and his other, his existing canon, that would still stand head and shoulders above some of his other work and
Yeah.
a lot of the work from other artists.
Yeah, I totally
Isn't
agree
it?
there. I think the quality is well, that's the thing. The quality of everything Bruce puts out, there is a high level of quality.
Mm.
Now, your opinion on it, whether it can be good or bad, in terms, it's not the physical quality of what's there. And I say physical in terms of like production as well, songs and stuff. The box set's a fantastic quality. As in, it's one of the nicest things I own in terms
I'm
of my
gonna
record
I'm
collection.
gonna admit to jealousy on that one, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm probably not going to be buying Tracks 3, but we should look at the future actually about Tracks 3. To be
I've got to
honest,
assume it's not going to be 7 albums.
no, I'd hope not. But yeah, we should look at the future just before we wrap up.
Mm.
So, Tracks 3, what do we think's going to come there? Because this is officially announced at the end of the mini documentary about Tracks 2. So, what do we think's coming?
Okay, so if we look at it on a purely factual basis, what we know, which is pointless because we didn't know
Mm,
about so much of this stuff in the
yeah,
same way, songs like "Wages of Sin" weren't known about from Tracks 1.
yeah,
I would say we know from studio logs there wasn't a lot of extra from, say, the first 3 albums. We got a recent
mm,
Born to Run
yeah.
recently,
There's
but
still
like
a
I say,
couple more tracks there as
and
well.
he reused that later.
Yeah,
He uses those melodies, and that's the fascinating thing as well, is hearing him repurpose parts that
yeah,
didn't quite work. There's, if you listen to tracks one, there's lots of use of that line, a drug to take away the pain that living brings. He
mm,
uses that quite a bit before he uses it in its final release.
mm,
I would say the thing we're still yet to hear a lot of is, and I don't mean the electric Nebraska, but I mean
mm,
there's a huge amount recorded around Born in USA we haven't had wind of.
yeah, yeah.
I think there might still be a little more 90s stuff too.
Yeah, there's not there's actually there isn't much from the 80s that we have heard, to be honest, is
No.
there really? When you look at it, this box set gives us a large deal of some of
Mm.
that period. But yeah, there really isn't much. And obviously we've got the film coming soon, Deliver Me From Nowhere, so there is a chance of potential Electric Nebraska stuff being released around then, if that's a thing. Bruce has acknowledged it exists again, hasn't he, recently? I think, hasn't he?
I
In
think
some
he's
way.
said they tried the album. There's so many
Yeah.
conflicting takes, but much like the thing you've got with this, and there's interviews of other people. If you read Born to Run, his biography, it kind of, there's stuff in there that is a little different to stuff he said in songs, and there's stuff that's a little different to it. You never know quite where it is. You know, I watched this fascinating interview where, and I think it's on there somewhere, some Australian reporter who knew a load around the time of Greatest Hits took his opportunity and ran with it and went past his allotted time and just went real deep on the songs. And you can see Springsteen looking at his manager like, is this okay? But he also, and he talks about alternate versions of Glory Days with different verses. So there's still a huge wealth in there from the 80s I don't think we've heard.
Yeah, I've got a feeling a lot of tracks 2 tracks 3 will be that. And yeah, also another period we've not heard much from. Okay, we've got Faithless here, the 2000s. Other than the stuff in Perfect World, and if you count High Hopes, but obviously that was all recorded in 2013.
Well,
there's not much we've heard from that period, so it depends how prolific he was.
I'd say the issue there was more producer, because I know Brendan O'Brien is more of a, if you listen to other bands or you look at other bands that worked with him, those periods where they were working with him, he didn't really record songs that he didn't think were going to be on an album.
Okay.
He was very much like, okay, these are the songs we're working on. There might be 15 that we whittled down to 12. So like Harry's Place came from The Rising.
Yeah.
But I think so I don't know if there's many outtakes from that period. I think what we've had from there and on the American Beauty EP might be it. But who knows? Who knows what's in that vault? Only what, 4 people know? By all accounts, the people that have final say are Springsteen, Aniello, and Van Sant has to sign off. He's quality control as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking forward to it. I don't know when it'll come. I assume it'll be in 2 years' time, would be my guess at the moment. But because
I reckon it's next year.
You think next year? Oh, really? Oh, because to be honest, I've got a feeling that Bruce wants to see everything released in his lifetime.
That's why I'm saying it. So I remember him saying recently he started to get the feeling of a train coming down the tunnel. There's a lot of mortality into that. He's 75. I think he's going to start releasing it. Plus, he needs the money. He's got legal battles to fight with Trump.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it nonetheless, and potentially a new solo album's coming as well, and things like this. So it all be good stuff. It's a very good time to be a Springsteen fan right now.
The new solo album's next year, so maybe it will be the year after that.
Yeah, because it's a great time to be a Springsteen fan. I mean, this year the amount we've been treated to is unreal. So yeah, we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much, Tony, for appearing on the podcast. So we'll do a quick wrap up before we obviously come off the call. But thank you so much for that. It's been a
pleasure as always, Dan.
A wonderful episode, because I always enjoy these kinds, and it's Bruce, so always good.
Pleasure.